next up we do have one of the big games of the weekend. It is the repeat of the World Cup semi-final in 2019, that tight, tense
Parentheses,
game.
the competitive one.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Have a shot there, All Blacks. Wales hosting South Africa, the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, 5:30pm on Saturday. This is a huge game. Paul Williams has taken it from New Zealand. Andrew Brace and James Dolman as AORs, and Ollie Hodges in as the TMO. Obviously,
interesting clash. Kiwi and Irish officials
walking
will
into a
half
bar.
of them be seeing no crossing, and the other half being like, "Isn't that cross?" No. And
Come to blows over.
Nah. Yeah, let's fly on.
I mean, this game is obviously one of the more intriguing of the past number of years. The last time they met, it was that dramatic, tense, physical semi-final, which became nearly a stalemate before Damien Del-Indy got in over the line to win the game for the Springboks. Obviously, overall, the Springboks, as you'd expect, have dominated the rivalry. They have a record of 29-6-1 against the Welsh. However, 5 of their 6 defeats have come in the last 7 games. And Gatland's Wales had something of an Indian sign over them.
They did,
for a time.
towards the tail end of his tenure. It took him a while, I believe, because he was there for so long. It took him a while to get that scalp, but then when he did, they managed to be wily enough to get that result. Although that trend was booked very comprehensively at the World Cup when the chips were down.
You say comprehensively, it was a tight game.
It was a slight game. It was a tight game, but they were just edged in it. And to be honest, Gatland's Lions this year were doing similar things and being just edged as well, because South Africa are very, very good at that kind of game. But I don't think that's what this Wales team are necessarily about. So I think we are in for a slightly different spectacle than what we got the last time these two met. Now, obviously, it depends, because I don't know where the Welsh confidence lies at the minute, whereas the South African one is probably through the roof. They just beat the All Blacks, even though, it's a funny old thing. Momentum is a strange thing. Like, after week 4 of the Six Nations this year, Wales were so excited and so bullish, and they were going for a Grand Slam. And since then, it's been kind of, it's been L, draw, L, L. For Wales since then, and so the momentum's pretty down. Whereas even like a few games ago for South Africa, they were people writing obituaries for their defensive style of game, because they'd lost 3 on the bounce, including 2 to the Wallabies, and then they beat the All Blacks, and that puts gets a lot more momentum back in your camp very, very quickly.
There's no question that South Africa are the team riding high into this game.
Sure,
but that doesn't necessarily mean everything. I mean, no. They interestingly enough have lost 8 of their last 12 games in Europe.
There you go. Well, they very often rock up in these end of season campaigns, not quite to the pitch, and sometimes they send developmental sides and new camps and stuff. And
regardless, it's probably since Rassie obviously came in 2018, and they didn't have a great November that year. But this is his first. Obviously he's not in charge anymore. It's Nienaber, but it's the two of them really. Yeah. This is their first time taking their team to November fully primed and fully ready to go, and to try and right that wrong. And I'm sure they have their sets in sight on doing just that. Obviously, Wales, as you say, coming in on a much worse ebb. Yeah. They had that defeat against France. They had the win against Canada, then drew to Argentina, lost to Argentina, hammered by New Zealand last week. It's kind of backs to the walls, and they are depleted. They're missing quite a bit of their squad. Ken Owens not there. Moriarty obviously last week.
Couple of casualties
Alan
from
Jones,
last week. Yeah.
Their hero. No Tipperick, no Navidi, still no George North, no Willis Halaholo. I believe no Liam Williams this weekend. Liam Williams did make it. He's on the bench.
Good.
That's obviously going to be important for them, and they do have some returning charges. They have the likes of Rees-Zammit and Josh Adams, and I think for those two guys it's
they'll
definitely
be very hungry to take on these Springboks, where they felt they should have already done so.
Exactly. They're a little jaded by what happened in the Lions tour. They didn't get to quite take them on, even though they felt that they would have felt that their form deserved it. And obviously I think for Dan Biggar as well, that Lions tour sits a little cold on his shoulders, because everyone's talking about Finn Russell comes in and they look different, and he was just sticking to the game line, doing what is best he can. So a chance for him to take on the Springboks with what will be a more expansive attacking game plan.
Well, they were playing a more attacking game with in Wales, with him at 10 and with all of these guys out there, than they were ultimately in that Lions tour. It is a different outfit and a different team. So chance for somewhat of a redemptive arc for the likes of Dan Biggar, but also just a chance to go for the guys like Louis Rees-Zammit and stuff, and just they want to get them excited and primed to take the field. Because even like last week, looking at Louis Rees-Zammit when he probably should have been in Cardiff taking on the Boks. He was in his Gloucester colours, wasn't he? And he was had the cut of a frustrated man for the first time you'd ever really see him. He didn't have his cheeky grin. It wasn't quite coming off for him. He was looking frustrated out there, possibly because he felt he should have been with the boys in Cardiff. But hopefully that he can hit the ground running in the Welsh jersey now.
Yeah, it's we have the full squad here. We're going to start just looking at the from the point of view of the home side, that is Wales, coming off that rough game last week. They have made some changes. Wyn Jones drops to the bench, the impressive form of Rhys Carey, earning him a start at loosehead.
Yeah.
They've got Ryan Elias they're keeping the faith with at hooker, despite a really tough showing against the All Blacks last week.
Truly. Thomas
Francis at tight head, huge job for him to step up. Will Rowlands taking the jersey of Alan Wyn Jones. Looked slow last week, didn't play well off the bench.
Sure.
Needs to improve. Adam Beard needs to take on a leadership role in that second row.
Yeah.
Moriarty's replaced by Ellis Jenkins of Cardiff, who's had an impressive start to the season, and Tane Basham and Aaron Wainwright make up the back row, and they did play well last weekend.
They look good.
They've got Thomas Williams in at 9, same selection as last week. But Dan Biggar crucially coming in to take hopefully the kicking duties entirely off his shoulders and run that offence. Nick Tompkins interestingly comes in at 12, bringing a bit of speed to the midfield. Jonathan Davis at 13. I would have thought with those two on the pitch that you might have inverted them and put Jay Davis at 12 and Tompkins at 13, but they may yet as the game develops.
Sure. And
then obviously that back three, Josh Adams, Louis Rees-Zammit and Johnny McNichol with Liam Williams to come on, is pretty tasty.
That is very tasty, to be fair.
So I mean they're obviously, they have a decent squad on paper, but there are a few sort of alarming areas of deficiency from last week that are in serious need of addressing.
Set piece, line out and scrum starts with them. They were shambolic in both throughout.
The All Blacks are very, very good at line out and scrum. The one side in the world that's better than them are the Springboks, and the Springboks are going to be coming to town hungrily looking to attack them in those areas. They looked so vulnerable last week. It is a mammoth task, but they're going to have to try and right that ship if they've any chance of winning this.
It's very much true, and they do have to stick to their guns. They do have to attack, but if they're slightly off the pace, they will be gobbled up as well in the open space by the Bok defence as well. So it has to be accurate. It does start with set piece, because they shot themselves in the foot. They were, as much as they were reeling from the opening bell last time out, they had chances to get into it, but they consistently squandered them, and it came at set piece.
Two attacking scrums that ended up in penalties against them. 3, as we talked about, overthrown lineouts.
Yeah, well, they had 3 in a row towards the tail end of the first half, 3 or 4 in a row, where they kept doing the same error and kept giving the All Blacks ins, and they may not be punished quite like it probably a similarly dominant showing from the Springboks or a similarly abject one from Wales probably won't amount to 50 points with this Bok team in the same way that it does for the All Black team.
And yet it might hurt more.
Might hurt more. It might feel, you might feel it all the more when you wake up the day after. So they need to rediscover some of their sharpness, and I think Biggar will help with that, because a lot of what came off 10 looked like ring rust at a lower level than what was like it was the All Blacks he was facing. Poor Anscombe. Like, Anscombe looked great last time he was in the Welsh jersey, but that was in a warm-up game before the 2019 World Cup. So it's a long time out of the test arena to then be thrown in to try and unpick an All Black defence that's mighty. So they'll probably be a little less cavalier in terms of how wide they look to go very quickly. Dan Biggar will use his boot. He's engaged with in this kick tennis with the Boks before. He will try and kind of navigate them safely a bit more as well. Try not to take them on as much.
I think obviously set pieces we talked about, and then the physical confrontation as well.
Yeah, the game line.
On the game line.
The All Blacks just went. I worry about the likes of Tompkins against Dale India in that regard.
I actually think certainly in terms of the immediate addressing of the problems, it was narrower than that.
Yeah.
It was all first runner off 10, just little balls to Savia. He was winning contacts, Retallick was winning contacts. They're going to have big Dwayne Vermeulen and Eben Etzebeth and Lou Diager screaming down those narrow channels. They're going to know it's coming too, and they need to front up and make big tackles if they're to have a chance in this game.
Guys like Basham and Wainwright need to have mighty shifts to back up what they did last week.
Those two will have to be the key playmakers on defence in the tight. Some big red zone steals are an in for Wales.
But obviously, Elias, he can be good in the loose in that regard. He can be a nuisance at the breakdown, similar to what Ken Owens brings as well. He has those Welsh handsy hands that get in there and slow up the ball, which they will need to do.
And Will Rowlands as well, after a tough game last week, will also need to step up in that contact area. I mean, it's a real sort of masculine test against the Springboks. You know what they're going to bring. They're going to be relentlessly physical. They're going to come screaming down those narrow channels, and it's on you to just physically stop them.
Yeah.
Then it's going to take some line speed, some chop tackling, some old school Sean Edwards, Juju. I know they don't have him in there anymore. That kind of defensive effort is what's needed to stymie them. Ankle tackles, to the Dan Lydiate plays, chopping them at source, being ready for it. I'm going to give them maybe the benefit of the doubt that they just weren't expecting from a defensive point of view to be overloaded in that area last week, and that's why they got caught so many times. This week they know it's coming, they know it's going to be narrow, it's going to be physical, it's going to be tough, and they also know that if they can front up physically, that the box can be caught a little clunky, and maybe if they can make them impotent and make them not as clinical in the red zone, that could be an in for frustrating them.
Definitely. Like, there are ins for them, and it starts with being trickier to play against than they were last week. Like, throwing a pick to Bodenbauer to start your stall off. No to all of that. And Bigger will likely be the wiser for that. I expect kicking in the early going, but crucially, if they are to win, it will involve Bigger and McNicholl getting on the same page distribution wise and managing to access the wide channels where those wingers eat. Like, it's tough. It's always a tough task because the South African defence is so good at cutting out that outside, but realistically at home in Cardiff, if they're going to beat the world champions, they're going to need to find those danger men in space at some stage and execute.
They probed nicely in moments last week when they kept the tempo high. They just didn't read the game well from 10, and that's what Bigger brings. He brings that good reading of the game for the whole offense.
Who's covering 10 on the bench, actually? He didn't go
it is Gareth Anscombe. He's not totally cut from the squad. Sure. But I mean, you say there's going to be a lot of kicking in it. You're probably right. There has been bullish talk from Rees-Zammit, from plenty of people, that no, we did it wrong. I mean, Gatland has been thrown under the bus so many times since that Lions tour. Like, the fear that I have is that Wales come out and go, yeah, I know how you play the Springboks, you silly Gatland. You play by throwing it around, and then all of a sudden you're looking at these matchups of like Nick Tompkins against Lacanio Am in the wide channels, trying to get outside him and getting smushed and losing the ball.
Yes,
and
all risk. That's why I think it's on the path. Let the ball do the work more than that, and it's on the guys like when it's on, it's Dan Bigger who needs to spot it first, and McNicholl needs to spot it too, because it's similar to what Villy LaRue brings to on the other side of it. Like, McNicholl needs to be ranging around. He needs to be that link man himself, and Jay Davis who can go through those hands as well. But if they're going to sit down that midfield, it's going to come through those guys. I think to be honest, Beard can do a lot of damage in the wide channels as well. Getting guys like, he looks very good when you have him a little wider as well. He's got a physique that can take on some of these Bok jerseys that may end up trying to shoot and smush him. But it's folly to just entirely kick the ball all day, but you do have to pick your moments. Like what we saw in that Lions tour was like the first set play, try and whip it wide and get absolutely creased in that. You probably don't need to engage with that early in the early goings. In the early exchanges, it could be a little bit of a chess match and a lower tempo affair.
You saw what Samu Karevi did to fracture the Bok defence, trying to attack in and around that 10 channel. You probably want someone like a Basham or a Josh Adams off the blind side, coming in and off a shortened line out. Maybe Bigger makes the read, maybe it's just straight off 9, but just trying to isolate Pollard in that defence. Obviously you're going to have a Quagga Smith or someone like that coming out of the line from a Bok point of view. It's about picking the right pass to cut a line inside of him, hit Pollard, sit down the defence, and then it's about speed. You got to go. Whether it's just short passes wherever the space is, obviously it's on Bigger to call it, but from Thomas Williams' point of view, you can't let the Bok defence reset, and if you don't let the Bok defence reset and fracture them, they can look a little flat-footed. They often get caught offside in that scenario. Then you get your free play, you get a chance to have a cut at them on the wide channels. That's kind of the picture that you need to get. You need to punch a hole initially and then go. It's got to be quick.
The classic earn the right to go wide thing, because the Boks don't give it to you at the beginning of the game, so there's no sense flinging it there. It'll end much the same as it did at the beginning of the last week's showing. So for Wales, a lot of tidying up is needed just on their game in terms of cleaning house. Like one scrum, line out, particularly line out was the most dodgy one, because the scrum, I think they will be under pressure for most of the game in this matchup. Even if they're at their best, I think they're under pressure there, but at their best their line out is a polished gem, and last week it was anything but. So that those little incremental improvements, you have to be on point, and then from there it's about the key leaders to make the right call at the right time and pull the trigger when it's on, but only then, not beforehand. And hopefully managed to contain the Springboks, who tend to struggle to build a score for all their dominance too. They want to paint a similar picture to what the All Blacks painted, soak their pressure and be able to strike. They're not a dissimilar team in ethos to what the All Blacks are bringing, although the difference between what they're playing at the moment was illustrated last week. It's still a similar MO for this Wales team, as opposed to the one that went to the World Cup, which was Gatland's one again, which ended pretty much identically to how the Lions tour went, where it was like very competitive kick tennis game for the whole time. But the Boks ultimately edged it because they're slightly better at that game. Yeah. This team are a slightly different one. They will have to engage with kick tennis a bit, but they should be sniffing out their time to strike.
Yeah, and they should be bullish about the kick tennis game as well. I mean, Josh Adams is going to need to have a big game, but I do expect him to. You've got Josh Adams and Rees-Zammit in the wings, lining up against not Cheslin Colby and no Afalele Fassi yet either.
Yeah.
They have Mapimpi and Jesse Creel on the wings. Jesse Creel was a centre by trade usually on the right wing.
He did start his career at the wing and then switched into centre. He's been centre so long that
he's been mostly a centre, and they have Damien Willems at fullback instead of Willie LaRue. Now he has been very good this year off the bench, but they should be looking to pressure
1v1 matchups, particularly Josh Adams, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. If they're going to win this game, they're going to need a big leadership kind of performance from Josh Adams, hunting down those kicks, winning that aerial battle, and then striking off the ensuing plays. Yeah. That absolutely is the picture. And likewise, Johnny McNichol, he can hunt down high ball as well.
Yeah, true. And then Liam Williams in off the bench is good impact in that area as well.
Can do it too. I mean, there's definitely there's promise there in that back three area, and making the game about that matchup isn't as bad as all that. From a Welsh point of view, I think they possibly have the more lethal wingers on the pitch, although I wouldn't sleep on Makazole Mapimpi. He is very, very good.
He has such a penchant for scoring tries for South Africa. He just loves scoring. And they all love him as well. I suppose, is it from South Africa's point of view as well, or do you have anything else on what Wales need to do?
They have to be the quicker side. They have to set the tempo of this game. They have to surprise South Africa as Australia did. Work some ins on multi-phase, catch them a little sluggish, catch them offside, and then strike off the free plays. And if they can score more tries than the Springboks, if they can get a couple of scores on, and then on the other side of it, put together a couple of goal line stands against a clunky enough offence, then all of a sudden you're making it a game.
Sure. I'd agree with that. Dial in things like restarts as a way to get in, things like the last 10 minutes of a half when they can sometimes switch off. All of these need to be good moments for Wales for it to come together. But to pivot on to the world champion Springboks and the Lion Tamers as they are, the All Black kind of game last week set the template a little. They're a little bit slight, this Welsh side, particularly in the tight five, and particularly after Alan Wynne-Jones went off last week. That's like the Boks normally would look at a team anyway and decide to beat them in the tight five, but in this sense, tactically, it makes sense to go after them as well. Even if it doesn't, a lot of the time the Boks will lean that way. So it's kind of set up for them to play their game and try and bully Wales.
100%. If they can do something similar to what the All Blacks did at set piece and just give Wales nothing to strike off.
Some push up in the face and cut off all the options to go wide, and then force them back into that contact zone where you're winning.
The All Blacks pretty early doors took away the Welsh attack and the Welsh set piece and left them pretty impotent. That is what the Boks will be looking to do 100%. And it is about just giving Elias the Wibbles, winning those individual matchups.
I think Diagher and Etzebeth up in his face all day.
Etzebeth in particular, I think, will be looking to get a read off those lineouts. He's going to be putting his monstrous frame around the front of that lineout, staring down Elias with his big hands up, going, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And then can you forgive him for overthrowing? Exactly. And,
you can maybe for overthrowing, but don't crooked throw. Because then we have to scrum again, and the last scrum was a penalty.
Exactly. And that's definitely the easy picture for the Boks. I'd expect to see that sort of pressure game, that usual defence that we do see from them flying up, Quagga leading it on the inside, leading it on the outside.
Formidable thing.
Just daring Wales to try and play the game that they say they want
accurate.
to play.
If you want to go that way, you just have to be freaky accurate to get over us.
Accurate in a way that the All Blacks couldn't be.
Exactly. The All Blacks, who were so accurate last week that it put them to shame. They couldn't break down this Bok defence, which is quite a frightful thought for a Wales side that's fledgling in its identity and looking to play a similar kind of attacking brand, high tempo attacking brand.
We do have the Bok team as well. I glanced over it. They've gone with the Oxenche, Bongi and Banambi and Big Trevor starting at front row, and then the bomb squad of Kitsoff, Marks and Koch to bring on. That obviously has worked so well.
It's worked as their first choice. It has arrived as their first choice and second choice in terms of units. They think of them collectively, and they just it works
very, very well. Obviously, we talked about Etzebeth and Diager, but just the small prospect of Sia Khaleesi, Quagga Smith and Dwayne Vermeulen in the back row.
Very good.
Herschel Yankees gets the nod at 9.
Interesting. Would have thought it would have been Reinach.
Yeah, so would I. Reinach obviously on the bench. Then they've got Pollard, Del Indy and Am, as we know, Mapimpi, Creel and Willemse, as we said. They have gone 5-3 on the bench, but they do have Franco Mostert and Jasper Visa to bring in.
Very good players.
And then they've gone Reinach, Elton and Franz Stain as back
similar
cover.
Usual suspects in many ways. A very familiar team this, with a few exceptions. The back three is interesting, for sure. New combination.
Creel, it's good to see Creel in there. I suppose he's been in the squad so long. He hasn't played much rugby because I haven't seen him feature for the URC.
That's true. He was very firmly in the second choice centre pairing. That was where he kind of found himself during the Lions tour. Was like that's where I'm at. I'm in the guys in behind Delindy and Am. When you want to rest Delindy and Am, in steps Creel.
I mean, I think the real challenge for the Springboks, obviously, is what they're doing on the ball. And we've seen in moments...
the gauntlet laid down to just improve their offence a little.
I think we've seen evidence that they're trying to do that. They're not quite as kick-heavy as they were at the start of the season.
And their passing needed to improve. Certainly, the worst it looked was in that Wallaby game that they lost with 4 tries, where they were then chasing the game and their passing looked poor. And since then it has improved. In the All Black, both of the All Black games, it was better. So they're obviously focusing on it. But as we were saying in the roundup of the Rugby Championship, they're not ripping up the script at all. The script is very by rote. They're one of the easiest teams to preview in World Rugby for us, because it's very often it's the same thing. It's like, you know what's coming, but it's whether you stop it or not.
Try and get outside them. I mean, they want to force defensive tries. They want to just own the game at set piece. They'll score a maul try, a defensive try, and give you nothing.
Chaos play try.
Give you nothing and win the game that way. But what they did add in those All Black games, and crucially this was with Faf de Klerk at 9, was that fizzing offense and
multi-phase for try.
Yeah, exactly.
You're rarely seen multi-phase Bok try.
Correct. Yes, and that's what I'm curious to see this week. Whether Herschel Yankees can replicate that kind of Faf performance where he takes it off. He has a number of runners and he has to hit the right man, whether it's Etzebeth coming on a flying line or whether it's time to screen it back to Pollard for the next runner.
Not on that guy to read the game well, because sometimes he's quick of action before kind of realising what he's doing.
That's the challenge. And I think exactly. He's a frenetic bundle of energy, which is similar to Faf, but whether he can read the game as well and pick the passes, I think is still to be seen. He's still very young.
True. His touch of bomb squad. Normally they do 6-2 splits, but having a guy like Reinach to chuck in off the bench is quite a good steadying force, even if it's not going Herschel's way as well. It looks... It's a very, very good team. Obviously, a few people missing. It's a shame to still not see Colby out there. Obviously, we were hoping...
he's out for the November series, unfortunately.
He's missing out on some test level rugby. He's always box office, but they do still have some quality in there. And watching that back row go to work, albeit without Peter Steph du Toit also missing, but to be honest, they finally landed on Quagga as the correct kind of speed substitute for him in terms of their system, rather than trying to play Mustard out of position, which didn't work. They've kind of arrived now at a passable solution. They still have Peter Steph to come back into this team
at some point, whenever he gets healthy again.
Their pack are monstrous, and their centres and just the way they defend is very impressive to watch. And it's whether they arrive hungry is the only question. Sometimes they don't in November, and it's questionable, but I have a suspicion that we're seeing a hungry side. Even the selection reads of a squad that is taking this seriously and wants to win their games.
Exactly. They want to right some wrongs against Wales. Wales look and feel vulnerable at the moment. They're missing most of their key players.
True.
And the Springboks are an extremely good rugby team at their best. They're just very, very difficult to stop at line out, maul, on just in the physical contact area. And when you saw how badly Wales struggled in and around the ruck last week. You can't help but think that guys like Malcolm Marks coming in off the bench, but also Etzebeth starting the game, Sia Khaleesi, they're just going to go to work on the inside, win those contacts.
Yeah, when Etzebeth runs into Will Rowlands, who goes backwards.
Yeah.
Like
Will Rowlands. Yes. And that's and that's probably the picture that they'll be looking to paint. It would take a mammoth effort from Wales to contain them, to catch them clunky, to force a few steals and nick a few tries here and there. Do you think they have it in them this week? Do you give them a shout?
Well, I know they have it in them, because I've seen them be dominated by packs all year in the Six Nations and still get tries off. I know they have that capacity in them, and that is the dynamic they need to find. They need to know that they're outgunned in the pack, but be the sharper side. They do have it in them, but I don't quite see it coming good this week for them. I think it's a very tough campaign they've set themselves up with Fiji to come next week, which
and then
isn't
Australia the week after.
Yeah, like it's as tough as a November gets for them, especially given the injury profile of them. But no, I suspect that the Springboks will be just too strong.
Yeah, too strong, too good.
Too strong.
I would agree. I think I think it took an incredible effort from the Wallabies even to catch them dialed out.
Yeah.
I think Razzie coming back in this week, obviously he's going to be in the coach's box this week. He won't be allowed to hand water out, but he will be there in the squad setting out his stall. It's one of the many things that was wrong with South African rugby before he came in that he wants to rectify is their away record in places like Europe. They've picked a full team. They're going to be determined to show up. Yeah. They're also a little fresh now after that All Black win.
True. They've had some time off. Certainly, like all of their top flight players have yet to grace the URC with their presence at all, and the ones that have been playing have been in the top couture of the Premiership and looking pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I potentially Wales rock up more at the pitch because they have that it's a wounded pride thing after a home loss like that.
Now it's 3 home losses on the bounce is what would be if they lose this game. It would have been Argentina, then New Zealand, then South Africa, which is no good. But just on matchup on paper, I worry for Wales. I actually worry for Wales' offense. I was worrying for the All Blacks offense when I was watching Havili be class all season long and then get swallowed up. And I like Nick Tompkins, but there's little matchups like that across the park where I'm just thinking, I don't think it adds up to a Welsh win at all.
Could be a bad one. I'm going to predict a big win for the Boks here. I think it might be 30 points to 6.
No, I'll say Wales do get some stuff off. I'm going to say the Boks 25 to 12 in a game that's never really in doubt but doesn't quite kick on.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah. It depends how slick the Boks are and whether Wales can rise to the occasion.
Thank you for tuning in to the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed what you hear, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below as well. We enjoy hearing your opinions too. Thank you.